This is the world you are graduating into. This is what I want to talk about today with you for a few minutes. I believe we, and particularly you, your class, has an incredible window of opportunity to lead in shaping a new world order for the 21st century.
Take the remote unit from its handy storage space, and you're set for hours of pure pleasure. Enjoy your favorite programs, black and white or color. Turn the set on, select your channel, see all color shows in living color. Once you've adjusted fine-tuning for each channel, you never need touch fine-tuning again, either at the set or on the remote unit. But if you want, touch, and you can adjust fine-tuning to suit your taste at any time.
What a great honor to be able to introduce for the first time ever anywhere the 45th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Did I get that one right?
Chief Justice Roberts, President Carter, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, fellow Americans, and people of the world, thank you. We, the citizens of America, are now joined in a great national effort to rebuild our country and restore its promise for all of our people. Together, we will determine the course of America and the world for many, many years to come. We will face challenges. We will confront hardships, but we will get the job done. Every 4 years, we gather on these steps to carry out the orderly and peaceful transfer of power. And we are grateful to President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama for their gracious aid throughout this transition.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Napoleon, Alexander the Great, Donald Trump, we're all cut from the same cloth.
Ancient Rome's national emblem was the single-headed eagle pointing west. America's national emblem is the single-headed eagle pointing west. From 300 to 500 AD, the Roman Church was weakened spiritually because of pagan infiltration. And after 200 years, the Church in America has also been weakened spiritually because of Masonic infiltration, which is nothing more than the ancient pagan religion of Babylon. Most historians also attribute the name America to the explorer Amerigo Vespucci. Freemasonry, however, has a different point of view, and this will be new to most of you. For according to Freemasonry and author Manly Hall, a 33rd degree Freemason, the Indians in Central and South America say the name came from their gods who were peace-loving. For example, the supreme god of the Mayan culture of Central America was known as Quetzalcoatl, a light-skinned god who wore a long white robe covered with red crosses. Carved in the stones of his temples were serpents. Quetzalcoatl was known as the peace-loving serpent god. Serpent god. The same god in Peru was known as Amaru, the god of peace. He was pictured as a plumed serpent. Amaru's territory was known as Amaruca. The 1895 issue of the publication called Lucifer, a periodical published by Freemason Blavatsky's Theosophical Society, states this, quote, "From the latter comes our word America. Amaruca is literally translated land of the plumed serpent. The priests of this god of peace once ruled the Americas. All the red men who have remained true to the ancient religion are still under his sway. And according to author William T. Still, Manly Hall claims that since the serpent is frequently symbolic of Lucifer, it is no exaggeration to extrapolate from this that America may well mean, quote, land of Lucifer, end quote. America is known as the good, benevolent, and peace-loving nation. We've also discussed the seal of the Illuminati. The unfinished pyramid, its capstone and its all-seeing eye, represents the kingdom of Lucifer. The image of this Luciferian masterpiece makes up half of the Great Seal of the United States of America. Just look at a $1 bill. And Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 12, tells us that Lucifer was the epitome of beauty, America the beautiful, may therefore be a sinister figure of speech for Lucifer the beautiful. Freemason Manly P. Hall states that when Atlantis died, so did the ideal pattern of government. According to Hall, the League of 10 Kings is part of the secret doctrine preserved by secret societies through their oral traditions. Hall believes that when the unifying force of the 10 Kings was broken, destruction automatically followed. So complete was this destruction, he writes, that men forgot there is a better way of life and accepted the evils of war and crime and poverty as inevitable. The old Atlantis is gone, dissolved in a sea of human doubts, but the philosophical empire would come again as a democracy of wise men. This connects directly with the protocols of the wise men of Sion. Freemasonry planned long ago to philosophically raise Atlantis out of the sea, and in this new land reestablish democracy as a new world order, Novus Ordo Seclorum. Masonic author George H. Steinmetz confirms in Freemasonry its hidden meaning that the democratic philosophy of Freemasonry has been traced back to the lost continent of Atlantis. He attempts to prove that Atlantis was a Masonic society by suggesting that the destroyed temples of Upper Egypt are all part of that Atlantean destruction. There, in Egypt, we find their ruined temples, which compared with our lodge rooms have similar floor plans, the same dark north, and many of the same emblems. And remember, in the Lion King, to the north was darkness and desolation. Finally, Steinmetz says that one cannot understand the universality of Freemasonry without accepting the Atlantean account. Hall concurs. Masonry is a university teaching the liberal arts and sciences of the soul to all who will attend to its words. It is a shadow of the great Atlantean mystery school which stood with all its splendor in the ancient city of the Golden Gates, where now the turbulent Atlantic rolls in unbroken sweep. And I bet you wondered why they named the bridge in San Francisco the Golden Gate Bridge. Now you know. Hall suggests that the antediluvian civilization was democratic, that Freemasonry planned over 3 centuries ago to recreate a universal democratic society that will philosophically rise up out of the sea, and like Atlantis, join with 10 kings to lead mankind in the pursuit of universal happiness. And what is the sea? Remember, the sea is the mass of humanity, great numbers of people. To rise up out of the sea is to establish through revolution, and that's coming. He says that the Christian church has delayed the search for the new Atlantis, and that's why they hate Christians, and Christians, like Orthodox Jews and the followers of the Prophet Muhammad, are scheduled for extermination in the New World Order. And he alludes to the ancient Roman Empire as the last attempt at resurrection of the Atlantean project, and states that another attempt would be made. Now we can see how Freemasonry's planned resurrection of Atlantis correlates with Daniel's prophecy of a revived Roman Empire. Likewise, John's vision of the beast with 10 horns, representing 10 kings, is more significant in this regard, given the fact that Freemasonry calls for its one-world government to be patterned after the Atlantean League of 10 Kings. Therefore, to locate the headquarters of Freemasonry's new philosophical Atlantis, Daniel's revived Roman Empire, and John's beast, we must search for a land that meets the following requirements. 1. If old Atlantis was democratic, then new Atlantis will be democratic and most likely be born of Templar French Freemasonry, the father of modern socialism. 2. John's beast and Freemasonry's philosophical Atlantis will figuratively rise up out of the sea in the Atlantic Ocean, somewhere west of the Straits of Gibraltar, where old Atlantis was alleged to have sunk, and will be established through revolution from out of the masses of people. 3. If resurrected west of the Straits of Gibraltar, Daniel's revived Rome will be a new land in a new world, populated from the territory of the old Roman Empire. 4. Daniel's uncivilized beast will be born in an uncivilized western land bordered by water. From Daniel's vantage point at Babylon, a land in the extreme west. 5. John's beast will eventually unite with 10 kings, as did old Atlantis, or will be divided into 10 regions according to the plan or the world model of the Club of Rome. And on its model, the world will also be divided into 10 regions. Unlike Edgar Cayce, Manly P. Hall is not looking for ancient Atlantis to literally rise out of the sea, and neither am I, and neither should you, but I know that some of you at least have, are, and will continue to look for the sea as the literal source of the rising of a new landmass, which will be called Atlantis. And you don't understand the symbology, the metaphors. You are looking at the exoteric. Manly P. Hall rather looks to America as the nation that will represent philosophical Atlantis, and so do I. And through my studies, I know for a fact that this is it. For they have made the admission over and over and over again in their writing, the esoteric writings of the secret societies, all of them. In America's Assignment with Destiny, Manly P. Hall writes, quote, "The explorers who opened the New World operated from a master plan and were agents of rediscovery rather than discoveries," end quote. And when Columbus landed upon the beach, instead of planting the flag of Spain, whom he was supposed to represent in his discovery, instead, ladies and gentlemen, this great explorer, who instead of carrying the cross of Christianity upon the sails of his ship, carried the cross, the red cross of the Knights Templars, planted a green flag with a white cross. In a second book, called The Secret Destiny of America, Manly P. Hall claims that the unifying goal of ancient secret societies was to create a new Atlantis beyond the Atlantic Ocean in what is now called America. The bold resolution, he said, was that this western continent should become the site of the philosophic empire. Still explains that America, according to this great plan, was to become the first nation to begin to establish a universal democracy or world commonwealth of nations. This quest was said to be the most noble pursuit to which a man could devote himself. And ladies and gentlemen, I would have to agree with that statement if it were done honestly and openly and for the noble purpose for which they claim. But we know that it is built upon lies and deception and manipulation, and that the men bringing it about, and it is all men, they do not practice what they preach. They are liars, deceivers, and manipulators. And there's nothing noble about the goal of these scum. The first modern philosopher to promote America as the new Atlantis was Sir Francis Bacon, who lived from 1561 to 1626. He was an English lord and Zionist Rosicrucian. As an occultist well-versed in the Great Plan, also known as the Enterprise, Bacon concealed the secret doctrine in a novel entitled New Atlantis, in which he laid out the plan for a utopian society to be built on this newly discovered continent. Masonic authors Marie Bauer Hall and Manly P. Hall respectively say of Bacon, and I quote, "Bacon is the founder of Freemasonry, the guiding light of the Rosicrucian order, the members of which kept the torch of true universal knowledge, the secret doctrine of the ages, alive during the dark night of the Middle Ages." Bacon had been initiated into the new liberalism represented throughout Europe by secret societies of intellectuals dedicated to civil and religious freedom. Later, when the moment was propitious, he threw the weight of his literary group with the English colonization plan for America, cherishing, as he did, the dream of a great commonwealth in the new Atlantis, end quote. This great plan has been perpetuated by an international group of only the highest initiates of the secret societies, as I have revealed to you over the years. Flammas eius, Lucifer matutinus inveniat.
Francis of the Holy See. All laws, since primordial antiquity, were written to regulate land and sea separately. Laws pertaining to land became the law of the land, or rather natural or common law, and laws pertaining to the sea became law of the sea, or rather maritime admiralty law, which is international law and the same everywhere in the world, no matter where you go. All laws since time immemorial originate from and are based upon ecclesiastical or canon law via the ancient laws and ecclesiastical right of kings. Natural or common law primarily preserves the inalienable rights and needs of human beings who live on land, differing between nations. The law of the sea, or maritime admiralty law, primarily grants the right that is legal to conduct merchant, banking, corporate, international commerce. Seeing how living persons cannot live on or in water for extended periods of time, and the Earth's seas have been used primarily for travel since antiquity, regulation of the sea for merchant, trafficking, shipping, and commerce through law became necessary for the merchants of nations to do business internationally. The law of the sea, maritime admiralty law, is universal and transcends all national boundaries and laws legally. What is legal is not necessarily lawful. Natural or common law, the law of the land preserving the rights and freedoms of living persons, is lawful. Maritime admiralty law, or UCC, Universal Commercial Code, is legal, and that legal robbery and murder. In ancient Rome, a Roman maxim law stated that he who will be deceived, let him be deceived, which means the responsibility of the deception is on the one that is deceived by it. Basically, if you get it up the hoop, or what we commonly refer to as being stiffed, shafted, that's your problem. Unbeknownst to everyone, maritime admiralty law, the international law of the high seas, came upon land like a flood and made every man, woman, and child since that time dead in the water. The word maritime comes from the Proto-Italic cognates mer, mar, mare, and mari, which all mean water. These cognates are found in words like commerce and merchant and maritime. The water that flows by currents in rivers is directed by the river banks. Water that flows in the world of maritime admiralty law is money, because money is water. Money is currency. It's liquid, as in liquid assets. Money, or monai, mono-I, or simply one eye in maritime admiralty banking laws, is the lifeblood, the cash flow of the system of merchandising and traffic. To traverse this fictional world, there must be ships. Ships traverse water or the sea, and when they come to land, they come into a port. When you plug your electronic device into a computer, you're plugging it into a USB port, a universal serial bus port. The world of the internet is analogized with water as well. We have the deep web, and when you do a live social media broadcast on the internet, you are streaming the show. When a ship pulls into the port, it comes down a canal to where there is a dock, and there the ship is tied off. The ship's captain submits to the dockmaster a manifest of birth, a license and manifest of goods and services being delivered by the ship to the dock. The dockmaster signs the manifest claiming the cargo as property now of the ward, which includes livestock. All ships are female. A woman is a ship. A man is a fabricator. A man delivers semen into a vessel. The woman bears the cargo of the semen and labors for 9 months, wherein her water breaks and the semen in the hold come down the birth canal through a port of entry and are delivered in a hospital delivery room. According to Black's Law Dictionary, a hospital is also a bank and also a church. The woman has shipped newly birthed Admiralty maritime product, stock, livestock, cargo. A doctor will untie the ship from the cargo, stock, the product, by cutting the umbilical cord to the ship or vessel and sign a birth certificate, a manifest of birth, after the cargo has been stamped or daubed by a footprint and fingerprint with blood and ink. And after the informants, which are your parents, sign the manifest, which is plainly written on the certificate itself, your parents, the informants, are informing the doctor that the cargo, the stock, is now delivered and can be claimed by signature. The doctor signs the certificate, making you now lost at sea as unclaimed corporate property, cargo, stock, product, commodity. You are now legally dead in the water, and your name appears in all capital letters and on every other legal document. Captain comes from the word capital, which means money or one eye, and equals water, the currency ration. All corporations are fictional. They exist on paper as a dead body vessel, just as your name in all caps on a birth certificate. The Constitution of the United States was formed in 1776. But the Constitution of the Incorporation of the United States was in 1871. The Corporation of the United States was formed in Delaware, Maryland in 1871 and became the United States, Inc. All citizens of U.S. Inc. have a license to work for U.S. Inc. They are employees. All corporations must have 3 things: a president, a vice president, and a secretary treasurer. Everything in the world of merchant corporate banking law revolves around ships, as ships are carried by the water, which is the current sea, and all corporations are ships. If you want to have a car, you must have an ownership. If you want to be a citizen of a nation or country, you must get a citizenship. If you go into business with someone, you enter a partnership. If you want to learn a trade, you may enter an apprenticeship. Want to go to college and get your degree? Get a scholarship. Want to go buy a new car? You go down to the dealership. If you are traveling by car, you may enter a township before you enter the very town. When a man and woman get married, and the word invokes maritime admiralty law, they enter a business contract. and obtain a marriage license to do business as a partnership. If you go to a church, which means a bank according to Black's law, you are going to a place of worship. Everything is a vessel, a fictional ship created out of thin air on paper in the sea of corporate commercial banking laws of pirates of the high seas. A person, according to Black's Law Dictionary, is a monster. According to canon law, Goyim, translated from the Hebrew to mean nations, cattle, chattel, animals, beasts, non-human according to rabbinical sources which are authoritative in ecclesiastical or canon law, which includes Talmudic rulings. Goyim have no rights. Admiral or admiralty laws apply to the authority of the captain, who is the admiral of the ship. Under common law, there's no such thing as a victimless crime, and a victim receives compensation and redress for damages. Aboard a ship, the captain can make any act of crime and he can impose sanctions accordingly. If you have a house and want to sell it, you put it up for sale. You are placing a sale on a ship which will set sail and dock to another port when sold. When you send a package somewhere abroad, you are shipping it, even though it's more than likely traveling by land. If you are losing your house, it's said that your house is underwater. If you get in trouble with the IRS, or if you go to prison, it's said you have landed in hot or deep water, and someone has to come and bail you out. The ship pulls into a port and gets tied off at a dock. When you go to a court, your case is placed in a docket. All courts in the land are judiciaries. They are judicial courts operating under mixed Roman, common, canon, and admiralty maritime law under a crown. They are ships docked on land. This, according to the Judiciary Act of 1789 passed by Congress, which made all district courts admiralty courts having maritime admiralty jurisdiction. The United States of America and the United States are two different entities. One is a corporation, the other employees of the corporation. The United States of America never ever did win its independence from the Crown in the Revolutionary War. The Treaty of 1783 upheld the tribute to the King's venture by the colonists, which means America remains to this day a British colony that pays tribute to the Crown, as imposed by the Charter of 1606. America was conquered. Liberty is not freedom. A sailor on a ship gets liberty when he's allowed to have a short leave from the vessel when the ship pulls into port. A dog has liberty on a leash when you take him for a walk. A prisoner gets liberty when he's allowed out of the cell into the courtyard for a few hours while under the careful watch of snipers. Liberty is a license. It is a privilege allowed by a ruler, owner, king, etc. to a subject of the same. America never has been the land of the free at any time. It's the land of liberty on the leash of the crown.
School is an 18-year forced government training program that sterilizes the potential for brilliance in children. Those who actually survive schooling and survive conformity and continue on to think for themselves truly are a rare breed. All children start out as curious, highly experimental minds, and then one day they're sent to school. Mandatory schooling has never consisted of anything but the memorization of monotonous dead facts and training children to master repetitious behavior. For the greater part of their day, everything the child says must match the interest of their school teachers. Their behavior must coincide with a set policy and a set regulation. They cannot use the bathrooms without permission. If they wish to speak, they must raise their hands. And after every hour or so, a bell rings and everyone must move to it. It couldn't be any more slave-like. And this type of training becomes a ritual for the child. It becomes the plot background for their television shows and books, or the ideology taught to them by a teacher or a parent. An entire monoculture is being developed here, stripping children of their power to cause trouble for the state at an early age, training them to be good servants of the politically correct. Their environment is much like a prison, by the population lacking any ability to check the authority of the warden. The process becomes a matter of rubber stamping. They have no control over their entire lives, which is directly related to youth violence, because the only control they have is between each other. Mandatory schooling produces children who are either terrified of the tyranny of others or have been raised to perpetually exploit the conditions of others. It's just like the prison system. Forced cohabitation. The child's presence in certain buildings and their engagement in state-regulated behavior is under penalty of imprisonment. An entire army of truancy officers have been hired to make sure that no child is on the other side of the bars. At the end of 18 years of coercive state authority, the child is released into the world. It's like the end of an 18-year prison sentence. Now that you're trained to do as you're told, now you can be free. And the produce of these schools, or this state-controlled manufacturing operation, is a society willing to submit, to obey, and to listen. Forced behavior, which technically amounts to a type of slavery, will only inculcate a mindset of fear and terror. You need to be somewhere at a set time, either at the orders of an authority or a bell. Everyone in one mass shifts to another position or another place to engage in a new activity. They're trained to not only follow instruction, but they're also trained to follow a certain behavior. Rules, regulations, and laws are set for the children. They say you cannot do this to others. You can do this to others. This is acceptable. This is not acceptable. Standards of culture, morality, and behavior are imprinted into these new young minds that are in the blossoming stages of development. Their minds are being intercepted by the state and molded to conform to state standards. The first lesson they teach you is the orders of authority. The second lesson is to work with each other to achieve the desired ends of those in control. If a group of children are taught to engage in the same behavior regardless of what they want to do, then they will never fight back as adults. And this is your group of tenants who will live in roaches and never call the health inspector. This is your group of citizens who is easily terrified by police officers into voluntarily giving up their rights. This is your group of workers who surrender their lives to the corporation who tells them how to dress, how to speak, what time to wake up, which means they essentially tell you what time to go to sleep if they tell you what time to wake up. This is nothing new. These are the fruits of mandatory schooling. If we look into the roots of 19th century industrialism, the Civil War demonstrated to industrialists and financiers how a standardized population trained to follow orders without significant thought could be made to function as a money tree. It's no surprise that global power and corporate wealth is based on a third-rate educational system that works against developing individuals of true character and true intellect. But the mindless bureaucrat or the thoughtless worker who will follow a system without question is the pattern that our system depends on. And this is what school produces. The system is not designed to educate the public, which is why federal and state bureaucracies call the shots, not the parents, not the local school boards. Every law is harshly enforced with maximum punishments. The tone of a principal is much like the tone of a warden, with no check on his authority. They will always have a way of using coercive ability to enforce a standard on the population. Strict punishment awaits any kid who disobeys this ruling force, and there is no doubt that an active student body reflects positively on school administrators. It's like factory floor men. They're fulfilling their quotas to the inspecting superintendent of the local school district. This is the reality of government training. The state doesn't care if children are homeless or on the streets or suffering from malnutrition and hunger, but the second the child fails to appear in school at the scheduled time, like a court date, the police are alerted. Until we abolish mandatory schooling, your child will be brought up as a slave so that he can accept becoming a slave later in life in adulthood.
Is that it is all theater at this point. And the reality is that it has been theater since before any of us were born. On this level, on the level of kings and queens and presidents and senators and all the movers and shakers of the world, Hollywood and Wall Street. These are not organic things or institutions or individuals who serve in them. And that, I think, is ultimately the deeper issue at stake when people are wrestling with the idea that all this could be so contrived and so scripted or so manipulated. Is because the implications are like almost so horrifying that it would just break your psyche. It would just, the idea that democracy, there's all these Republicans and Democrats debating, making these grandiose speeches, and now all washing their hands of the crazy wannabe tyrant. They're quoting Abraham Lincoln and quoting, whoever the guy was that said, you have your democracy if you can keep it, and all these nostalgic Americana-isms that is all just a farce. It's all archetypal fantasy. It really is. All the idea that we're even in a democracy, as if democracy is ultimately even something that God bequeathed upon the world to accomplish his eternal purposes. And that's really, I think, the level of contemplation and biblical discussion that is a really hard place for Christians and non-Christians alike to go and to think about those kinds of questions in the big picture sense. And for me personally, it's been something that I've been grappling with for probably 20 plus years now, ever since I first, stepped outside of the United States where I grew up and started looking at the world just from a different perspective, and the way that the rest of the world perceives the United States versus the way most Americans perceive reality and America and all sorts of things. And trying to reconcile that with what I would read in the Bible was never an easy. It just got harder and harder as time went on, and that was even before I suddenly found myself watching things on the internet that I couldn't believe were even on the internet. When you're watching skyscrapers collapsing at free fall speed and things like that, and then many other things. And in some ways, it's not a simple matter at all. It's very complex, and it's I'm really hesitant to oversimplify it in certain ways, but in other ways, it is very straightforward and very, very simple when you just put it in light of eternity in the kingdom of heaven as Jesus explains it, and Jesus outlines everything. And you could almost look at the entire span of history, of biblical history, from Genesis all the way to the modern day, as these different stages of human beings, grappling with that tension between the kingdom of heaven and the kingdoms of this world. And that's kind of the context that the whole thing takes place in and through. And the Bible's all about kingdoms, and if you pick up the Bible and read it and understand what is being said, what is being presented in the Old Testament through Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and then Moses and David, and the creation of this earthly kingdom called Israel, which was supposed to be a theocracy, and they didn't want a theocracy. They wanted a man. They wanted a human king. And all the human kings that God gave them were never, even the ones who had amazing faith, were still fallen, broken men and couldn't save anyone from anything. Until one man came along, who was not just a man. And the theocracy was revealed. The true theocracy, and the way that theocracy was brought about and accomplished and secured and released out into the world, if I might grossly summarize the New Testament in such a way. But ever since the completion of the New Testament, the completion of Scripture, and regardless of what translation and which books you want to consider canonical and all that, I'm just saying, we've now had 2,000 years of just church history, where, again, that tension between people keeping their eyes on the kingdom of heaven versus getting sucked into the affairs and the kingdoms of this world and playing politics and being influenced by all kinds of ideologies and isms and agendas that never came from God. And you can go down that whole rabbit hole with science and scientism, and where do all these concepts and questions really arise? Do they come from the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or do they come from pagan cultures of Greece and others? But it's the same thing with politics. The Bible gives us really the only politics of the Bible is Jesus is the king. And we're strangers and aliens in this world. Just like you'd be a stranger or an alien living in another country, and you're just there on a visa kind of a thing. You're a citizen of another kingdom, not this one.
This is Zabbatai Zevi. He declared himself to be the Jewish Messiah, non-coincidentally, in 1666. He led the largest Messiah movement in Jewish history. He attracted more than half of all European Jews. He promised to return them to their so-called homeland in Palestine. He inverted every holy teaching in the Torah to unholy teachings. He preferred the satanic teachings of the Talmud tenfold. No more guilt, no more sin, no right or wrong, no more 10 commandments, no more sexual limits, no fasting, only feasting, and no more upholding the Sabbath. His immoral leadership finally fell from grace when the Sultan of Turkey threatened to torture him and kill him if he did not convert to Islam. He converted, but his evil, infectious theology didn't die. 1 century later, Jacob Frank claimed to be the reincarnation of Zevi and the living Messiah of all so-called Jews. Frank and his disciples were even more wicked. He rejected and inverted the Torah, just as Zevi did, and said, since we all can't be saints, let's be sinners. He claimed the best way to emulate God is to cross every boundary, transgress every taboo, and mix the sacred with the profane, just as God did. Orgies, rape, incest, pedophilia, including sodomy of young boys, just as the Talmud encouraged, were encouraged. In 1773, Jacob Frank traveled to Frankfurt, Germany, to the birthplace of the modern banking cartel and the Illuminati. There in Frankfurt, Germany, he formed an alliance with Adam Weishaupt and A.M. Rothschild of the Rothschild banking dynasty. The purpose of the alliance with the Rothschild dynasty was to win control of the world's gold, central bank, and wealth for obvious reasons. Over time, the Rothschilds sent their agents of John Jacob Astor, Jacob Schiff, and Paul Warburg to America, where they infiltrated the privatization of the Federal Reserve System and dismantled the U.S. Constitution. The goal of Weishaupt and his Jesuits was to take control and undermine the hierarchy of the Catholic clergy. It's obvious today that Weishaupt has achieved his goal. Weishaupt also formed the Order of the Illuminati, and him and his agents infiltrated the Freemasonic lodges with his doctrine until every Masonic lodge in every nation accepted it. The goal of the Frankists was the destruction and replacement of Jewish ethics with a satanic mystic religion that is the exact opposite of the holy teachings of the Torah, which is exactly what you see today with the Talmud following modern Jews. When this unholy trinity of conscienceless men was started between Frank, Weishaupt, and Rothschild, a destructive war against humanity erupted, which we see the byproduct of today. With an endless supply of Rothschild financing, Jacob Frank became very wealthy. He was put in charge of spreading the Luciferian theology that the hidden hand would be using behind the scenes. Frank's followers were called 17 Frankists. They practiced witchcraft, alchemy, and occult rituals, including human and animal sacrifice, which we see continued to this day. The Frankists expanded their movement by masquerading as converts to other religions. They converted to Catholicism, Islam, and of course already had a stronghold in the Jewish community. The Saudi royal family is a great example of Frankist crypto-Jews, and where modern Islam stems from. The Catholic Church has been controlled by the Jesuits for a long time. It's obvious with the modern Jesuit Pope. The Frankists traded their wives, sisters, and daughters with members, and they used them to seduce powerful outsiders whom they needed in their pockets. There's nothing new about our inverted society. The Frankists have successfully taken over and spread their evil, unnatural doctrine by hiding behind the facade of the eternally suppressed Jewish people.
You're just here temporarily, in whatever earthly kingdom, earthly government thing that you happen to find yourself in. As none of us chose to be born in the time or place that we were. We were born where God had us be born. And for different people, that presents different challenges and different things that they have to kind of lay down as they come face to face with the offer of heavenly citizenship versus earthly citizenship. And so, just like with so many things that a lot of people in America, or what we would call the West, all these inheritors of Western quote-unquote civilization, these European traditions, whether it has to do with technology and science and all that kind of stuff that we've clung to as, part of this great benevolent outpouring of godly culture onto the world, that these things are all, they're all related. This is why it's a hard thing to just talk about without getting caught up in some little side trail. But the United States has indeed been so unique in so many ways that you could spend years and years trying to kind of grapple with all these sort of paradoxes of understanding that, Jesus didn't call us to create governments and politics and build empires. And when you look at the history of the Catholic Church, that's exactly what they did, right? When they were seduced kind of by, just worldly affairs and monetary gain and building temples, basically.
My son, heretofore you have been taught to act the dissembler, among Roman Catholics to be Roman Catholic, and to be a spy even among your brethren, to believe no man, to trust no man, among the Reformers to be a Reformer, among the Huguenots a Huguenot, among the Calvinists to be a Calvinist, among other Protestants generally to be a Protestant, in obtaining their confidence, to seek, even to preach from their pulpits, and to denounce with all the vehemence in your nature our holy religion and the Pope, and even to descend so low as to become a Jew among Jews, that you might be able to gather together all information for the benefit of your order as a faithful soldier of the Pope. You have been taught to insidiously plant the seeds of jealousy and hatred between communities, provinces, and states that were at peace, and incite them to deeds of blood, involving them in war with each other, and to create revolutions and civil wars in countries that were independent and prosperous, cultivating the arts and sciences and enjoying the blessings of peace. To take sides with the combatants, and to act secretly with your brother Jesuit who might be engaged on the other side, but openly opposed to that with which you might be connected, only that the Church might be the gainer in the end, in the conditions fixed in the treaties for peace, and that the end justifies the means. You have been taught your duty as a spy to gather all statistics, acts, and information in your power from every source, to ingratiate yourself into the confidence of the family circle of Protestants and heretics of every class and character, as well as that of the merchant, the banker, the lawyer, among the schools and universities, in Parliament and legislatures, and the judiciaries and councils of state, and to be all things to all men, for the Pope's sake, whose servants we are unto death. You have received your instructions heretofore as a novice, a neophyte, and you have served as a coadjutor, confessor, and priest, but you have not yet been invested with all that is necessary to command in the army of Loyola in the service of the Pope. You must serve the proper time as the instrument and executioner as directed by your superiors, for none can command here who has not consecrated his labors with the blood of the heretic. For without the shedding of blood no man can be saved. Therefore, to fit yourself for your work and make your own salvation sure, you will, in addition to your former oath of obedience to your order and allegiance to the Pope, repeat after me. I, now in the presence of Almighty God, the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Blessed Michael the Archangel, the Blessed St. John the Baptist, the Holy Apostles St. Peter and St. Paul, and all the saints and sacred hosts of heaven, and to you, my ghostly Father, the Superior General of the Society of Jesus, founded by St. Ignatius Loyola in the pontificate of Paul III, and continued to present, do, by the womb of the Virgin, the matrix of God, and the rod of Jesus Christ, declare and swear that His Holiness the Pope is Christ's vice-regent, and he is the true and only head of the Catholic or Universal Church throughout the earth. And that by virtue of the keys of binding and loosing given to His Holiness by my Savior Jesus Christ, He hath power to depose heretical kings, princes, states, commonwealths, and governments, all being illegal without His sacred confirmation, and that they may be safely destroyed. Therefore, to the utmost of my power, I shall and will defend this doctrine of His Holiness, right and custom against all usurpers of the heretical or Protestant authority whatsoever, especially the Lutheran of Germany, Holland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and the now pretended authority and churches of England and Scotland, and branches of the same now established in Ireland and in the continent of America and elsewhere. And all adherents in regard that they may be usurped and heretical, opposing the Sacred Mother Church of Rome, I do now renounce and disown any allegiance as due to any heretical king, prince, or state named Protestants or liberals, or obedience to any of the laws, magistrates, or officers. I do further declare that the doctrine of the churches of England and Scotland, of the Calvinists, Huguenots, and others of the name Protestants or liberals, to be damnable, and they themselves damned who will not forsake the same. I do further declare that I will help, assist, and advise all or any of His Holiness agents in any place wherever I shall be, in Switzerland, Germany, Holland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, England, Ireland, or America, or in any other kingdom or territory I shall come to, and do my uttermost to extirpate the heretical Protestants or liberals' doctrines, and to destroy all their pretended powers, regal or otherwise. I do further promise and declare that notwithstanding I am dispensed with to assume my religion heretical for the propaganda of the Mother Church's interest, to keep secret and private all her agents' counsels from time to time, as they may entrust me, and not divulge, directly or indirectly, by word, writing, or circumstance whatever, but to execute all that shall be proposed, given in charge, or discovered unto me by you, my ghostly father, or any of this sacred covenant. I do further promise and declare that I will have no opinion or will of my own, or any mental reservation whatever, even as a corpse or cadaver, but will unhesitatingly obey each and every command that I may receive from my superiors in the militia of the Pope and of Jesus Christ, that I may go to any part of the world whithersoever I may be sent, to the frozen regions of the north, the burning sands of the desert of Africa, or the jungles of India, to the centers of civilization of Europe, or to the wild haunts of the barbarous savages of America, without murmuring or repining, and will be submissive in all things whatever communicated to me. I furthermore promise and declare that I will, when opportunity present, make and wage relentless war, secretly or openly, against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals, as I am directed to do so, to extirpate and exterminate them from the face of the whole earth, and that I will spare neither age, sex, or condition, and that I will hang, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up the stomachs and wombs of their women, and crush their infants' heads against the walls, in order to annihilate forever their execrable race. That when the same cannot be done openly, I will secretly use the poisoned cup, the strangulating cord, the steel of the poignard, or the leaden bullet, regardless of the honor, rank, dignity, or authority of the person or persons, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private, as I at any time may be directed to do so by any agent of the Pope, or superior of the Brotherhood of the Holy Faith of the Society of Jesus. In confirmation of which, I hereby dedicate my life, my soul, and all my corporal powers, and with this dagger which I now receive, I will subscribe my name, written in my own blood, in testimony thereof, and should I prove false or weaken in my determination, may my brethren and fellow soldiers of the militia of the Pope cut off my hands and feet, and my throat from ear to ear, my belly opened and sulphur burned therein, with all the punishment that can be inflicted upon me on earth, and my soul be tortured by demons in an eternal hell forever. All of which I do swear by the Blessed Trinity and blessed sacraments which I am now to receive, to perform, and on my part to keep inviolable, and do call all the heavenly and glorious hosts of heaven to witness the blessed sacrament of the Eucharist, and witness the same further with my name written, and with the point of this dagger dipped in my own blood, and sealed in the face of this holy covenant.
Simply put, this country and this world benefit from your commitment to Jesuit principles, to being men.
As a graduate of another great Jesuit institution, Xavier University, I have great affection for the value and purpose of a Jesuit education.
So the joke being here is that Henry Kissinger and the other people that he mentioned are Catholic. I mean, what you're getting told here is the truth in the form of jokes.
Well, without the amazing support of the many devoted Catholics on stage. You know, Catholics like Henry Kissinger, Howard Rubenstein.
Like all Jews, apparently, you know, and according to the internet conspiracy truthers, the Jews run the world. So this guy's telling you the truth here in the form of a joke.
Well, without the amazing support of the many devoted Catholics on stage. You know, Catholics like Henry Kissinger.
Okay? Because they're not Jews, they are Catholic.
When you see how contrived and controlled and satanic it just all has been, everything that comes out of that box for generations now, ever since the TV was invented, and the radios and the telegrams and everything before that, of course, but, you know, yeah, most of you are listening on your cell phones now, and, you know, we all listen to things on our cell phones, and God is not going to redeem the world through technological innovation or through some new super equitable financial system for everybody in the world based on blockchain or something like that. He's not going to redeem the world through injecting stuff into your bloodstream to save you from, you know, the disease that he allowed onto the world in the first place. God's not going to redeem the world through billionaires, but through politicians or generals and kings and queens. He's not going to redeem the world through activists or celebrities. He's not going to redeem the world through Oprah or anyone else on this earth other than his Son, whom he sent. Amen.
Self-evident, Brother Franklin, all men are created equal.
Indeed, Brother Washington. All Freemasons meet as equals, and we have an opportunity to create a nation in the very essence of Masonic morality. It would be wonderfully symbolic, don't you think?
You'll be wanting to put the all-seeing eye on our banknotes next.
You think I'm taking it a bit far?
Please don't ask me questions like that, Brother Franklin. You know I cannot tell a lie.
Oh, come on, Brother Washington. Everybody lies occasionally, surely. Especially politicians.
Not me. Not even so much as an alternative fact.
But we must all be aware of fake news.
The people must be free to think what they like as well. We can have no thought police in our new society. The foundation stone of our new nation built on all those principles that we hold dear.
The plans for our new capital city already have a very Masonic feel to them, yeah.
Candidate for initiation into the order, I'm giving him a little introduction into some of our mysteries. These two gentlemen are founding an entire nation built on our principles.
We have great promises for our new nation. You know, I wonder if other presidents after me will also be Freemasons.
Many will be. And Freemasonry will become embedded in the American culture. And the eye will appear on the banknotes.
Oh, God.
These principles will be honored with a gift from your French brethren. A gift that will be a welcoming beacon to the poor and oppressed.
This is the statue we are giving you.
It's a bit small, isn't it?
Oh, this is a maquette. The real thing is bigger. Much, much bigger.
America will produce a great many great Americans from many different walks of life and many different fields, and many will be Masons. Sportsmen, actors, writers, soldiers, filmmakers, businessmen, inventors, astronauts.
What on earth is an astronaut?
No, they're not.
I don't follow.
Well, they're not on Earth, they're in space. In fact, Brother Buzz Aldrin was the second man to walk upon the surface of the moon.
That's the best thing I've heard this evening.
What, that a Mason walked on the moon?
Man on the moon. Amazing. But don't forget the musicians. Do not forget the musicians.
Authoritarian and totalitarian regimes continue to suppress Freemasonry, afraid of its strong heritage of liberty and equality.
It symbolizes the inevitability of your end.
The British Army had travelling lodges that moved with regiments. Freemasons have served their countries and communities with distinction.
Freemasons met across the Union and Confederate divide to celebrate their common rituals.
And today, Freemasonry remains an active part of military life in many countries.
Freemasonry has burned as a blazing fire through the last 3 centuries. The driving force behind the Royal Society was initiated into Freemasonry.
Prince Edward, Duke of Kent, father of Queen Victoria, and Prince Augustus, Duke of Sussex. The two princes brought their feuding Grand Lodges together and reconciled to be the United Grand Lodge of England.
Kings George IV, William IV, Edward VII, Edward VIII, and George VI were all Freemasons, as were 18 dukes and princes, including the Duke of Edinburgh.
This year, His Royal Highness Prince Edward, the Duke of Kent, celebrates his 50th year as Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of England.
His Royal Highness was proposed into Freemasonry by the then Grand Master, the Earl of Scarborough.
He was initiated into Royal Alpha Lodge number 16, an advocate for the craft all over the world, continuing 3 centuries of distinguished royal tradition at the very heart of English Freemasonry.
To order, brethren, to receive the most worshipful, the Grand Master.
As permanent master of these 3 lodges, I now call on my deputy masters.
Most worshipful Grand Master.
Most worshipful Grand Master.
Most worshipful Grand Master.
Most worshipful Grand Master, I humbly ask you to complete the initiation of this worthy candidate for Freemasonry.
Adorn our ceremonies and forever remind us of our incomparable heritage, the birth of organized Freemasonry,
stressing the deep and sincere loyalty and affection felt by the Brethren of the United Grand Lodge of England for their Grand Master.
I had the pleasure of meeting 136 Grand Masters visiting from overseas at Freemasons Hall yesterday. Today, though, we are a meeting of more than 4,000 gathered from all around the world, from our own constitution and beyond. When the global Masonic family comes together to celebrate our past and renew our own pride and confidence in and enthusiasm for Freemasonry.
I hereby read the text of a letter sent today to Buckingham Palace. May it please your Majesty, we, the representatives of over 200,000 Freemasons under the United Grand Lodge of England, most respectfully express our continuing loyalty to your Majesty's throne and person in this, the 66th year of your long and distinguished reign, of His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent, as our much-loved and greatly respected Grand Master. We humbly thank God for preserving our order and fervently pray His blessings on your Majesty, so that our loyal devotion to your Majesty may long continue. Given at the Royal Albert Hall this 31st day of October, Anno Domini 2017. Her Majesty has been pleased to reply in the following terms. The Queen has asked me to thank you for your kind letter of loyal greetings on behalf of the representatives of the Freemasons under the United Grand Lodge of England, which are being celebrated on the 31st of October at the Royal Albert Hall. Her Majesty appreciated your thoughtfulness in writing as you did.
We leave the Royal Albert Hall even more proud of our ancient institution.
Worldwide, Freemasonry remains as important and relevant as ever. A global society of perhaps 6 million people.
As the globe embraced Freemasonry, enlightenment came.
I may not agree with what you say, but I shall defend to the death your right to say it.
None is more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free.
Coat of arms of Donald Trump. What does it actually represent?
Well, this is rather interesting, actually. This is arcane Scottish heraldic law providing evidence of Donald Trump's deep Anglophilia, I would say, and also touches upon the royal prerogative. There we have the double-headed eagle representing his Scottish Germanic heritage.
The Masonic Chip program uses modern police-approved techniques to create a child identification kit.
And we take fingerprints. We also provide them with a swab
for getting a DNA swab, and we also provide them with imprint where they can get an imprint of the child's teeth. So not only does it provide DNA as well as a swab, but it is also a source if you were using tracking dogs to provide a scent for the child.
You may be surprised to see who we found using tricks to cover up their license plates.
Apparently, they're law enforcement.
You know, in Hollywood and in the industry and the stuff we do, there's a lot of like insider secrets to keeping your career going, and a lot of insider secrets to making things tick.
By faith, Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed. He went out, not knowing whither he went. By faith, he sojourned in the land of promises in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Through faith also, Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed and was delivered of a child when she was past age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. Therefore sprang there even of one, and him as good as dead, so many as the stars of the sky in multitude, and as the sand which is by the seashore innumerable. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have had opportunity to have returned. But now they desire a better country, that is, an heavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city. By faith, Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac. And he that had received the promises offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said, that in Isaac shall thy seed be called, accounting that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from whence also he received him in a figure. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. By faith, Jacob, when he was a dying, blessed both the sons of Joseph, and worshipped leaning upon the top of his staff. By faith, Joseph, when he died, made mention of the departing of the children of Israel, and gave commandment concerning his bones. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents, because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandment. By faith, Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he had respect unto the recompense of the reward. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured, as seeing him who is invisible. Through faith he kept the Passover, and the sprinkling of blood, lest he that destroyed the firstborn should touch them. By faith they passed through the Red Sea, as by dry land, which the Egyptians are saying to do were drowned. By faith the walls of Jericho fell down, after they were compassed about 7 days. By faith the harlot Rahab perished not with them that believed not, when she had received the spoils of people. And what shall I more say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon, and of Barak, and of Samson, and of Jephthah, of David also, and Samuel, and of the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. Women received their dead raised to life again, and others, were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. And others had trial of cruel mockings and scourgings, yea, moreover, of bonds and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn asunder, were tempted, were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and in mountains and in dens and caves of the earth. And these all, having obtained a good report through faith, received not the promise, God having provided some better thing for us, that they, without us, should not be made perfect.